The criticism surrounding Caitlin Clark just took another turn, and this time it's coming from a major voice in sports media. A personality from Fox Sports recently questioned one of the biggest narratives in basketball today, asking a simple but loaded question. When is she going to start winning? And almost instantly, fans across the sports world started debating what that actually means. Because depending on who you ask, Caitlin Clark is either already changing women's basketball forever, or she still has something major left to prove. That's what makes this conversation so interesting. Over the past 2 years, Clark has become one of the most talked about athletes in America. Her rise from college superstar to WNBA headline maker has brought record television ratings, sold-out arenas, and non-stop attention to the league. But at the same time, criticism has followed her every move. Some analysts believe the hype around Clark has become larger than her actual accomplishments at the professional level, at least so far. And now, according to recent discussions in sports media, that debate is getting louder. The comments that sparked the reaction came during a broader conversation about expectations in the WNBA. The Fox Sports personality questioned whether Clark's popularity should automatically place her among the league's elite before significant team success has happened in the pros. The central argument wasn't necessarily about talent. Even many critics acknowledge Clark's extraordinary shooting range, court vision, and offensive creativity. The bigger issue being raised was winning. In other words, when do individual highlights turn into championships, playoff runs, and consistent dominance? That's the part of the conversation that has divided fans. To understand why this topic exploded online, you have to look at the unique position Caitlin Clark entered when she arrived in the WNBA. Unlike most rookies, Clark wasn't simply drafted into the league quietly. She entered with unprecedented attention. Reports suggest her games immediately boosted ticket sales, merchandise revenue, and national television interest. Some arenas even moved games to larger venues because demand skyrocketed whenever Clark and the Indiana Fever came to town. That kind of attention creates enormous expectations. And historically, sports fans often connect greatness with winning. Fair or unfair, that's how athletes are usually judged. Michael Jordan heard it before his championships. LeBron James heard it early in his career. Even legendary WNBA players face similar questions before winning titles. So some analysts argue that Clark is simply experiencing the pressure that comes with superstardom. Others believe the criticism ignores context. Because here's the reality. Basketball is still a team sport. The Indiana Fever were rebuilding before Clark arrived, and turning around a franchise doesn't happen overnight. According to many basketball analysts, expecting immediate championships from a rookie, especially in a league filled with veteran talent, may not be realistic. And that's where the debate becomes more nuanced. Supporters of Clark point out that her impact extends beyond wins and losses right now. They argue she has already transformed visibility for women's basketball in ways few athletes ever have. Television ratings reportedly surged during her college career, and many believe that momentum carried directly into the WNBA. Fans are reacting not only to her performances, but to the energy she brings to the sport itself. Critics, meanwhile, say popularity and success are not always the same thing. That distinction matters. Some former players and commentators have suggested that sports media sometimes crown stars too quickly before major accomplishments happen professionally. From that perspective, the Fox Sports criticism wasn't necessarily personal. It was about expectations. The argument is that true superstar status in professional basketball eventually has to include postseason success and consistent winning against elite competition. And honestly, that's a conversation sports fans have all the time. What makes this situation different is how emotionally charged the discussion around Caitlin Clark has become. Every game, every foul, every quote, every social media clip seems to spark massive reactions online. Supporters defend her passionately. Critics push back just as strongly. And somewhere in the middle, basketball conversations sometimes turn into larger cultural arguments about media attention, popularity, race, league history, and generational change in women's sports. That's one reason why even relatively small comments can suddenly dominate headlines. Fans reacting online had very different interpretations of the Fox Sports comments. Some agreed with the criticism, saying that professional sports ultimately come down to winning and playoff success. Others thought the comments ignored how difficult Clark's transition has already been. WNBA defenses are faster, stronger, and far more experienced than what most rookies face in college. And despite that adjustment period, Clark has still shown flashes of why she became one of the most celebrated college players ever. Her long-range shooting, passing ability, and offensive confidence remain elite skills. Even critics often admit that her talent is undeniable. The real disagreement is about timing. How long should it take before expectations shift from promising rookie to championship-level star? That's not an easy question to answer, because sports history shows development rarely happens in a straight line. Some athletes dominate immediately. Others take years before reaching championship form. And in team sports, circumstances matter. Coaching, roster construction, injuries, chemistry, and league competition all shape outcomes. According to recent discussions among basketball analysts, evaluating Clark fairly requires separating individual performance from team success, at least for now. But there's another layer here that makes this story bigger than basketball statistics. Attention itself has become part of the debate. Clark's popularity has brought enormous visibility to the WNBA, but visibility also creates scrutiny. Every missed shot gets replayed. Every loss becomes a trending topic. Every heated moment gets analyzed for days. In many ways, Clark entered the league carrying expectations that few rookies in women's basketball have ever faced. And with that spotlight comes pressure to deliver immediately. Some fans believe that pressure is unfair. Others think it's the natural consequence of becoming one of the faces of the sport. What's especially interesting is how this conversation overlaps with broader discussions about the WNBA's growth. The league is experiencing increased media coverage, rising attendance, and more national conversation than ever before. Clark is clearly part of that story, but so are many other players across the league. Athletes like Angel Reese, Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and several others continue shaping the league in different ways. That's important context because some observers feel media attention sometimes becomes too concentrated on a single player, while others argue Clark's audience growth benefits everyone involved. Again, there's no universal agreement, and that's probably why this story continues gaining traction. The Fox Sports criticism ultimately tapped into a larger question that exists in almost every sport. How do we define greatness? Is it championships? Statistical dominance? Cultural impact? Popularity? Longevity? Or some combination of all those things? For Caitlin Clark, that answer is still unfolding in real time. She's still early in her professional journey. There have already been impressive moments, difficult adjustments, intense criticism, and enormous expectations. And because of the spotlight surrounding her, every step of that journey feels amplified. What's undeniable is that people are paying attention. Even critics who question the winning aspect are still discussing her constantly. That alone says something about her influence on the current sports landscape. Few athletes generate this level of conversation so early in their careers. But the challenge now becomes turning attention into sustained success. That's where the next phase of Clark's career will likely be judged most heavily. Can she elevate her team into consistent playoff contention? Can the Indiana Fever build the right roster around her? Can her individual brilliance eventually translate into postseason victories? Those are the questions analysts, fans, and critics will continue asking moving forward. And to be fair, those questions are completely normal for rising stars. The difference is that most athletes don't face them under this level of national attention. So as the debate continues, one thing remains clear. Caitlin Clark has become far more than just another rookie player. She's become a central figure in the evolution of women's basketball, a lightning rod for sports debate, and one of the most discussed athletes in America today. Whether the criticism from Fox Sports motivates her, fuels her supporters, or simply adds another chapter to the conversation, it guarantees one thing: people will keep watching. And maybe that's the biggest story of all. Because years from now, fans may look back at this exact period as the beginning of something much larger. The pressure, the debates, the expectations, the criticism, sometimes those are the early signs of a player stepping into superstardom. But what do you think? Is Caitlin Clark already proving her value through impact and visibility alone? Or do true sports legends eventually have to silence every debate with winning?